President Joe Biden is visiting Saudi Arabia as the United States considers resuming offensive arms sales to the country. Let me just repeat that for a second. Not defensive arms to protect itself from imaginary threats. Offensive arms, meaning weapons that are used to carry out offensive military action. And I'll get to those details in a moment, but the Biden administration is discussing the possible lifting of its ban on US sales of offensive weapons to Saudi Arabia. But any final decision is expected to hinge on whether Riyadh makes progress toward ending the war in neighboring Yemen. Let's pause for a second. That condition kind of doesn't make any sense, right? So why would you resume sales of offensive weapons on the condition that they stop the war in Yemen? I mean, what's the point of offensive weapons? Well, let's get to that. So there are defensive weapons, right? So these are weapons specifically used to protect yourself, and they're considered defensive based on their capacity to cause harm, the distance that these types of weapons can travel to cause harm. For instance, the UK and the US have provided NLAW and Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine. The NLAW can destroy a tank, but is only effective at short range between 20 to 800 meters. The Javelin also has a range of 2,000 meters, right? So that's considered defensive. It's considered a weapon that would be used to defend yourself if there is some sort of threat against your country, some sort of military threat. But it's different from offensive military weaponry. By contrast, but contrast this with the ability of MiG jets to fly hundreds of kilometers into enemy territory, giving Ukraine, for instance, the capacity to attack across its borders. This is why Poland has been cautious in its attempts to supply Ukraine's Air Force with Soviet-era MiG-29s. There is a danger that this could be seen as crossing the line into an aggressive act. So again, offensive means offensive weaponry means the country that is using the weapons very likely is using it to launch an offensive attack against another country. So the idea of just using this condition of Yemen, I feel like is nothing more than a cover story. Like, here's the PR narrative that we'll put out there so the Biden administration doesn't get the backlash that it deserves for resuming the sale of these weapons. But in reality, you think the United States really cares about whether or not Saudi Arabia is gonna end its war in Yemen? I mean, I'm sure there are some lawmakers who are concerned about that, who do want the war to end. But at the end of the day, the Biden administration wants to resume the sale of offensive weapons to Saudi Arabia, because at the end of the day, the Biden administration wants Saudi Arabia to produce more what? More oil. That's what this is about. That is what this is about. So right now, Saudi Arabia has leverage because it is part of the OPEC cartel, meaning it is an oil producing country that has manipulated the cost of oil by holding back on production. I wish we were in a better place right now where we were more reliant on natural renewable energy, so we wouldn't have to deal with, I don't know, Saudi Arabia and Mohammed bin Salman, who ordered the execution and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi as he was visiting an embassy over in Istanbul. But now we have Joe Biden, showing up to Saudi Arabia, considering resuming the sale of offensive weapons to this authoritarian regime in Saudi Arabia. And he's doing it specifically because he's trying to convince them to produce more oil. Now, Biden, by the way, as a presidential candidate, denounced Saudi Arabia pretty aggressively, and he did it on the debate stage. And I want to remind you of the type of language he used on the debate stage. Biden, not known for being super aggressive, but he was in this moment. Let's watch.
Khashoggi was in fact murdered and dismembered, and I believe in the order of the Crown Prince. And I would make it very clear, we were not going to in fact sell more weapons to them. We were going to in fact make them pay the price and make them in fact the pariah that they are. There's very little social redeeming value in the present government in Saudi Arabia. And I would also, as pointed out, I would end the subsidies that we have, end the sale of material to the Saudis, who they're going in and murdering children, and they're murdering innocent people. And so they have to be held accountable.
They have to be held accountable until we need them to produce more oil. In that case, I'll suck up to Saudi Arabia, I'll visit Saudi Arabia, I will reconsider our ban on selling offensive military weaponry to Saudi Arabia. And again, this is after he made that promise on the debate stage. This is after the Biden administration commissioned an investigation into the murder and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi, and of course found through that investigation what we already knew, that yes, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, the Saudi crown prince, was the one who ordered that assassination, that murder. And so this is why it is a huge problem that we haven't focused more on getting the United States off of our dependence on fossil fuels. Because we have engaged in so many wars over oil. We have overthrown leaders in other countries. We have overthrown governments in other countries in order to ensure that we have access to oil. It has caused a lot of damage around the world. And the fact that the Biden administration, along with, by the way, lawmakers across the board, both Democrats and Republicans, they have resisted the efforts to shift toward renewable energy. And to be sure, that is the long-term goal. That is something that is worth continuing the fight over. But there is something that Biden could do in the short term that he's unwilling to do, because there are Americans suffering right now as a result of our reliance on oil. They're feeling it at the gas pump. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what Biden can do. But I do want to just quickly get into how Biden is trying to provide cover for what's about to go down with Saudi Arabia, which is again, friendlier relations with people who are brutal to their own, let's be clear about that, but more importantly, who killed a Washington Post journalist and dismembered him. Like, we were critical of Donald Trump when he was providing cover for Mohammed bin Salman. Biden deserves the same treatment if he's gonna engage in the same actions. Now, Biden wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post, and it's titled, "Why I'm Going to Saudi Arabia." Why am I going to Saudi Arabia? Okay, tell us, Joey B, why are you going over there? "I'll travel to the Middle East to start a new and more promising chapter of America's engagement there. This trip comes at a vital time for the region, and it will advance important American interests." Ooh, important American interests. What are those interests? And to be honest, Biden is halfway candid here, because he does admit its energy resources are vital for mitigating the impact on global supplies of Russia's war in Ukraine. And a region that's coming together through diplomacy and cooperation, rather than coming apart through conflict, is less likely to give rise to violent extremism that threatens our homeland, or new wars that could place new burdens on US military forces and their families. Now, he doesn't get into how he's very likely to resume the sale of offensive weapons to Saudi Arabia. But I'm really enjoying this whole war is peace Orwellian messaging in Biden's op-ed here. I'm gonna hit up the homies over in Saudi Arabia, because that means, more peace. More peace, everybody. I'm looking out for you. Now, he also wants to strengthen the alliance between Israel and Saudi Arabia to counter Iran, which, by the way, what's up with the Iran nuclear deal? Biden said that he was gonna re-enter the Iran nuclear deal, which was an incredibly important thing to do. Iran nuclear deal ensured that Iran would not develop nuclear weapons. There were safeguards in place. There were members of the international community who were able to go into Iran and ensure that Iran was following through with its side of the deal. Trump comes in, he rips up the Iran nuclear deal. Biden says he's gonna re-enter it, hasn't re-entered it. Instead, he talks about strengthening the alliance between Israel and Saudi Arabia to counter Iran, which sounds like you're taking a more combative approach here, to be clear, right? By the way, Iran has been crippled by our economic sanctions. Sanctions that were much more harsh as soon as Donald Trump decided to re-implement them after tearing up the Iran nuclear deal. It's just a complete mess. So what could Biden do? Because since we can't shift to renewable energies fast enough, and people are really feeling the pain at the gas pump, you could do what Norway did. You can nationalize our fossil fuels. You can nationalize the energy that we're so reliant on, and then we would have a little more control over the pricing. And what I mean by that is, since you have corporations controlling the oil and the natural gas in this country, they get to decide what to do with it, including selling it to the highest bidder. You have all these so-called OPEC plus countries producing oil, and they can manipulate that by withholding production, right? And you see that happening with Saudi Arabia. But more importantly, if the United States decides, no, this is a natural resource that should belong to the people of the United States, well then the US government stops subsidizing the oil companies. The US government also ensures that the people of the United States get to benefit and profit from this natural resource instead of these private companies. But is Biden willing to do that? I mean, we have overthrown democratically elected leaders in other countries because they had the audacity to nationalize their oil. We did it in Iran in 1953. We've tried to do it in Venezuela. So there's no way in hell Biden would do that. But there is a model that works, a solution for the short term. We are the top oil and natural gas producing country in the world. When the right wing tells you that we have scaled back on our production of these fossil fuels, they're lying to you. #1 country in the world when it comes to producing these resources. But they're not controlled by us. They're not controlled by the American people. We provide tax breaks and subsidies for these corporations, but we don't benefit from them. They price gouge us. And of course, they export these natural resources to other countries. So when we're feeling the pain at the pump, it's because of this privatized model that ensures that a small group of people benefit from these natural resources, price gouge the American people and people around the world when it comes to these natural resources. They have the ability to manipulate the value and the price of these resources. It's a system that puts us at a significant disadvantage. But Norway figured out how to do it right. Is Biden willing to do it? Of course not. Of course not.